Hi, I'm Zach Spader, and I'm a Zoho consultant with Cornerstone Business Solutions. Cybersecurity is a topic that's important to every business these days. Whether you're a doctor's office and you're storing patient medical records, a bank keeping track of financial transactions, or just a sales organization storing names and phone numbers, keeping that data private is your number one priority. As a Zoho consultant, many businesses come to me asking how to limit access to certain information for their users. Today I'm going to show you how to set up security settings in Zoho CRM to keep your data secure. Let's take a look. For our demonstration today, we're going to be using the enterprise version of the CRM. Please be aware that if you're using the standard or professional editions, some of the features may be limited in those versions. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into the CRM and click on the setup icon up here in the top right hand corner. And we're going to navigate to Security Control under Users and Control. There's three settings that we're going to talk about today. It's the Profiles, Roles, and Data Sharing settings in CRM. Let's start off with Profiles. A fresh instance of the CRM will come with two profiles enabled, the Administrator Profile and the Standard Profile. Now the Administrator Profile is going to have all permissions turned on. You can come in and limit that to some extent, but there's certain things in this profile that you can't turn off. Same thing with the Standard Profile. This profile has certain functionality enabled, certain functionality disabled, but there are certain things that we're not able to turn on or off. For that reason, we usually create a couple of additional profiles for our customers. The first one is a team profile. And the team profile is cloned off the standard profile. It's very similar, but because it's a profile that we have created, we have the ability to turn on or off every single function within this profile. If you don't want your team to be able to have the ability to delete an account, you can deselect delete so that your users don't have the ability to do that. You can turn off the functionality altogether for a module by deselecting it here. The second profile that we create is a super user profile. Now, the super user profile is cloned off the administrative profile. This profile would be for a user who you trust, who you want to have access to most of the CRM, but you do want to limit some functionality. So in this super user profile, we have turned off the ability to manage user management and to manage APIs and developer permissions and things like that. So this would be somebody who has almost all the permissions of an administrator, just without some of the high level permissions. Now, before we go on to the roles, there's one other thing that I want to mention real quickly. The administrator profile in the system. Typically, an organization would want to have at least 2 administrators, usually no more than 3 administrators in the system. You want at least 2 just in case one of the administrators gets locked out or loses access to the system. That way the other administrator still has access and can get the second administrator back into the system. And you typically don't want to have more than 3 administrators in the system. That is just giving too many people access to the permissions in the CRM to be able to change things. So let's move on to the roles now. Before we talk about role hierarchy, I want to say that there's 2 different ways to set up hierarchy in your organization. Go back to the setup menu, click Company Details, and then select Hierarchy Preference. So you see that there's role hierarchy and reporting hierarchy. Role hierarchy is easier to set up, but it does have some limitations. In role hierarchy, you may have multiple users in different roles in the organization. In this scenario, if you wanted to say send a notification to a user's manager, because you have multiple people in each one of those roles, you wouldn't necessarily know who the user reports to. With reporting hierarchy, it's more complicated to set up because you basically have to recreate your organizational chart. But the system knows who each user's reporting manager is. For our purposes today, we're going to focus on the role hierarchy because this is what 95% of all organizations use. So I'm going to go back to Setup, then Security Control, and Roles. And you can see in this example that we have 3 levels of access here. This top level here is the organization. This is not a role that you can actually put any users in. This is just a role that gets created by default when you set up with the name of your organization. So these 3 roles right here, all access, manager, and individual access, is the structure that we use to set up most businesses. Now, all access is going to have access to every record within the CRM. Then on the bottom end, individual access has access to only the records that they own within the CRM. And the management level is kind of something in between. They have access to their records and the people that are underneath them who they manage. Next, let's talk about data sharing settings. Data sharing settings are whether or not a module is public or private. So you'll see here that we have a list of all of the modules in the CRM, and to change the access, we can click on the Edit Default Permissions button. Again, we have the modules listed, and then we have 3 options: private, public read-only, or public read-write-delete. If you set these up as private, the users would only have access to their records based on the role hierarchy in the system. So if you were to set the leads as private, I would only be able to see a lead if I owned the lead, or if I were in a role hierarchy that was over a person that I managed, I would be able to see their records as well. So role hierarchy plays very heavily into the data sharing settings here. So again, private only gives users the access to see their records, and it gives access to those records to the people who are above them in the hierarchy as well. Public read-only is the ability for users to see all the records in the system, but only be able to write or delete records that they own. Again, this depends on hierarchy. So the users that own the record and the people that are above them in the hierarchy would still be able to write and delete those records. But if I did not own a record or was not over a person in the role hierarchy, I would only be able to see their record, not write or delete. And then public read, write, delete gives all users the ability to see them, to edit them, and to delete those records, no matter who owns the records or what the hierarchy roles that are set up. Now, as we scroll down, we need to save those settings, and it takes us back to the main screen here. At the bottom of this screen, we have what are called sharing rules. Sharing rules can get really complicated, and they're really only needed in an organization that has the reporting hierarchy set up. Remember, we chose the role hierarchy for this organization. In this case where you set up reporting hierarchy, you may need to overwrite certain role hierarchies and data sharing settings, and so that's where these sharing rules come into place. This would be the ability to say share leads with a different role within the reporting hierarchy of the system, or to share all accounts from one type of role to a different type of role. So if you wanted to share from the sales department to the billing department, billing would need to see all of the records. Sales would maybe only needs to see the records in their division. So you could set up a data sharing rule to be able to share certain records to other users in the CRM based on a group or a role within the CRM. So we've talked about security control on a global scale. That's all done through the security control section underneath users and control. But what if you want to get more granular and control access to specific fields in a module? That's actually in a different section. We're going to go to customization and then modules and fields, select the module that we want to edit, select the layout, and then choose the field that we want to edit permissions for. So in this case, I'm going to choose the source specifics field. I'm going to click on the ellipsis, the 3 little dots, and then click set permission. The window that pops up is going to give us the ability to limit access to this particular field only. So you'll see here that what's controlling this is the profile. So by profile, we can set the access to this field. So let's say that we want the administrator to be able to read and write the standard and the team profiles. We don't want to show this field at all, and the super user read only. So in this particular case, the administrator is the only one that would have full access to this field to be able to see and to edit the field. The super user would be able to see the field and the value that's in the field, but would not be able to edit it. And the standard and the team profiles would not be able to see this field at all. So this allows you to get really granular, to be able to go by a field basis to select which fields that users can see and interact with in the CRM. So we've talked about a lot of things today. Hopefully you have the confidence to dive into your CRM and get started setting up these security settings. Thanks for joining us today. As always, if you found our video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Check out our other videos on various Zoho applications, and if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us online at www.zcrmhelp.com.